I was 58 now, but I could still feel the heat in my neck like it happened yesterday. Sabin looked right through me in the conference room, then called out loud enough for the whole table to hear, "Merritt, grab coffee and those napkins from the supply closet." I'd walked in with a binder of Southeast turnaround models. 19 people at that table. Not one looked up. One guy, Miles, I think, snickered. 6 months earlier, I was the one Rupert called first. He'd clear space at this very table, lay out my rollout maps, and say, "This is how we move." Then Rupert dropped dead on a Tuesday jog, and just like that, the whole seating chart shifted. His daughters took the head spots. I got nudged to the edge like I was part of the furniture. "And those small sandwiches," Sabin added, not even glancing at me. "The ones you brought last time were decent." I stood there by the door, holding my binder tight to my chest like an intern. I told myself to breathe, turned, and walked out. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. And let's continue. Behind me, I heard heels and then a laugh. Not loud, but clear enough. I knew that laugh. I'd heard it on vacation, in bed, at our wedding. Colette. I brought the tray in. Silver, clean, quiet. Colette didn't even meet my eyes. "Thanks, babe. Just set it there." That word, babe, in front of the clients who used to chase my forecasts, felt like a slap. I looked around for some kind of reaction. Nothing. Just phones and pens. Not even eye contact. Mavis Pike was the only one who met my gaze. 60 years old, admin since the fax era. She just stared down at her notepad. Even she didn't say a word. Rupert once told me, "You've got the engine and the brakes." That day, I didn't have anything except a tray of coffee and napkins. I set it down. Sabin smiled and said, "You're really helpful with little details, Merritt. That kind of smile people use when they're mocking you but still want deniability." A couple folks chuckled, light, nervous, guilty laughs. Nobody laughed too hard. Shame's contagious. I didn't say a word. I walked out, went straight to my office, pulled out a cheap black notebook I'd bought at the pharmacy down the block. First line I wrote, 9:12 a.m., coffee, napkins, sandwich wisecrack, room watched. Folks think I blew up overnight. Truth is, that was the day I started counting. Back then, I was 30, just married to Colette, Rupert's younger daughter. We were based in Charlotte, running out of the red brick building on South Tryon, the one with the worn brass plaque and no real parking. That year, I stepped in as director of strategy. Young, maybe, but not green. I'd done my time in the trenches. Logistics, margins, the deadweight losses no one wanted to touch. I saw the rot under the numbers before anyone else wanted to admit it. The Southeast Division was a mess. Everyone kept treating it like a bruised knee when it was a busted femur. Folks in the room were floating Band-Aid ideas, add a rebate here, swap a vendor there. I said, "We're doing the right moves for the wrong decade." That shut things up. Rupert leaned back, ran a finger across his mustache, and said, "Go on." He gave me the space to build. I came back 2 days later with a plan. Real adjustments. New pricing bands built off competitive elasticity, distributor reshuffles to kill freight bleed, and a service bundle with same-day resupply and fleet tracking. No one in our space was offering that. I wasn't reinventing the wheel, just willing to touch the third rail. He greenlit the pilot in 3 cities, Tampa, Raleigh, and Savannah. 2 quarters later, revenue in the Southeast climbed 37%. Margins ticked up 4.6 percentage points. Not overnight, but real. Every morning my phone buzzed with updates. Region heads called for the playbook. People who used to second-guess me were quoting my numbers back to me like they wrote them. That's when Rupert started saying things like, "Tradition with a steering wheel." Never in front of others, always when we were one-on-one. I didn't push, I didn't need to. I could feel it shifting. He'd built the company his whole life. He wasn't going to hand the keys to someone reckless. But he also wasn't sentimental. He saw who moved the needle. One night, late, he said it outright. "I've got something set aside. One condition, you show back-to-back quarters of 18% plus in a division you lead, I'll open it. No promises to anyone else." I didn't know what he meant exactly, just that it mattered. I hit those numbers that fall, 19%, then 21, Southeast humming, Team stable, client churn at record lows. 3 weeks later, he went out for a morning run. Never came home. Tuesday, April, clear skies, dead on arrival. I remember the will reading like a car crash I couldn't stop watching. 40% to Colette, 40 to Sabin, the rest split between longtime employees and 3 charities I'd heard Rupert mention maybe once. My name wasn't on the paper, not even a clause. Family first, the lawyer said, like it meant something. Structure holds. I smiled, nodded, shook hands with Rupert's longtime tax guy, then walked out into the parking lot and sat in the car with the engine off. Colette didn't even ask how I felt. After the funeral, Sabin took over reorg duties. That was the word she used, like we were just shuffling files around. She kept the COO title in her signature, even though no vote had ever been called. Her desk slid next to Colette's in the main office. I stayed in my corner, same office, same grind. Nobody told me to leave. Nobody told me anything at all. I remember walking in one morning and seeing the company org chart up on the glass board. My name was still there, barely, thin gray letters under special projects. No one knew what that meant, not even me. Sabin would pass me in the hall and toss me fake friendly lines like, "Glad you're still around." Colette had started giving updates in meetings like she'd built the Southeast fix herself. I didn't argue, I didn't correct. I just opened my notebook and kept writing. I logged everything. Quotes, timestamps, decisions that used to go through me now handled in kitchen whispers between the sisters. I didn't lash out. I didn't stomp. I recorded. I still have that notebook. Thin pages, black cover, worn corners, every single line, every shift, every smile that felt off, every time they pretended I wasn't in the room, and every day the numbers told me exactly what they were ignoring. The first slice came wrapped as a favor. Sabin leaned into my doorway with that half smile she used when she wanted something done but didn't want fingerprints on it. "Merritt, Martha's out sick today. Can you handle refreshments for the meeting?" Martha was 60 and had called me Mr. Vance since the day I walked in. She knew where every file was buried and who lied about numbers. I nodded once and didn't argue. I set up coffee, cups, creamers, the whole spread. Nobody thanked me. Nobody commented. They just took what I placed down like that had always been my role. A week later, Colette slid it in over oatmeal like it was a household chore. She didn't look up from her bowl. "We're doing a little space optimization. Your office makes more sense for the new marketing pod." I waited for the rest. It came quick. "You can work from home. Hot desk if you need to come in." She said it like I was the one asking for flexibility, like I was lucky she was being reasonable. By noon that same day, my nameplate was gone. I saw it stacked on the facilities cart by the elevators. A kid with a perfect haircut and a clean notebook rolled into my corner office before lunch. I didn't say a word. I packed 3 boxes and carried them to my car myself. Diplomas, trade awards, and the framed photo Rupert liked, the one where he looked tired but proud. The website update hit on a Thursday morning. I checked it from my phone before coffee. Founder, Rupert Morrison. CEO, Colette Morrison. COO, Sabin Morrison. My name wasn't anywhere. Not leadership, not advisory, not history. It was like I'd never existed. I took screenshots, not because I needed to convince myself, because I knew sooner or later this would land in front of a banker, a lawyer, or a judge. Records matter when smiles fade. 2 weeks later, we had lunch at Rinaldi's. Big table. 27 people, linen, wine glasses, the whole show. I got seated at the far end by the salt shaker next to a junior analyst who kept checking his watch like he had somewhere better to be. Colette held court. She talked Pendry manufacturing like she'd walked their shop floor for years. I'd built the mitigation timeline myself, down to the labor buffers. Nobody asked me a single question. Plates piled up, glasses emptied. Midway through the main course, Sabin leaned back and said, clear as day, "Merritt, can you clear these plates? Jessa says the server's behind." The room went quiet so fast I could hear the hum of the lights. I stacked dishes, one by one. My neck burned. I didn't look up, but I saw Malcolm Fitch turn his eyes away. He couldn't watch it happen. That night, Colette told me I was overthinking it. She said it gently, which somehow made it worse. "Maybe a support role fits you better right now," she added, like she was doing me a kindness. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask what that meant. I just listened. The next morning, a box showed up at our townhouse, white cardboard. Inside was a white apron with the company logo stitched clean across the front. There was a note in Sabin's neat handwriting. For the man who keeps the kitchen running. I didn't tear it up. I didn't throw it out. I placed the apron back in the box, set it on my desk, opened my notebook, and wrote down the time it arrived. I made the call at 11:52 p.m., closet door shut, tie still on. Colette was asleep down the hall, or at least pretending to be. I sat on the floor between a stack of winter coats and a busted Dyson. Signal was fine. Breath was tight. Kaido picked up on the second ring. Old MBA classmate, now a shark in a suit without a wrinkle. Shen, he said, voice flat like always. Hypothetical, I said. Family company. Dispersed float. I need to buy, and I need to be a ghost until I'm done. He didn't laugh, didn't even pause. Acquire or defend. Acquire. Budget. I gave him the number. Everything I had in savings, the stocks I could cash out without raising flags, plus what Grandma left me when she passed in 2006. A number that made my stomach clench saying it out loud. He ran the math in his head. We can do it through layered entities, he said. Clean and legal. Offshores for privacy, domestic vehicles for optics, and trusts seated by pensions. Your name won't surface unless you decide it should. I pulled a notebook off the shelf and scribbled notes in shorthand, same way we used to prep for finals. He sent frameworks before we hung up. I saved them into a folder I named Lake Marston, after a fishing trip we talked about for 5 years and never took. He asked me one thing before we got off the line. Do they think you're capable of this? I said, they think I pour coffee. The first bite came through Crown Bay Holdings. Quiet LLC, paper address in Wilmington. We bought 5,000 shares from Harlan Breck, 72 years old, former board member. I sat with him on a bench outside church after service one Sunday. He said he wanted his shares in aligned hands. I didn't lie. I just didn't say those hands were mine. Next came a pension fund out of the Midwest. They were trimming public equity exposure. Kaido worked it through 2 intermediaries, one in Tulsa, one in Harrisburg. No flags, no stories, just clean paperwork and fax confirmations. I watched every signature line. By month 3, I was holding 12.4%, spread across 6 entities. I say that number because I tracked every single deed and share transfer myself. Kaido sent the packet sealed. I scanned them twice before filing. They're still in my fireproof lockbox. During the day, I kept showing up to work like nothing had changed. I smiled in meetings. I shook hands at client dinners. I cleared plates when Sabin asked. I logged every offhand comment, and every time someone didn't include me on a thread I used to start. I kept track of who laughed, who looked away, and who asked if I was okay when the meetings were done. Harlan called a week after our deal. He said, I've seen a lot of hands reach for power, not many with a steady grip. I thanked him and didn't say more. There was still a long way to go. One morning, Colette asked why I kept locking my office drawer. You never used to, she said. I just said I had sensitive files again. That was technically true. Every move Kaido made was built for deniability. LLCs that didn't trace back to me, vehicles named after counties and creeks, trusts with vague beneficiary structures. I learned the language, beneficial interest, voting alignment, tiered activation clauses. I didn't need to be an expert, I just needed to follow instructions, check every document, and keep my name out of sight. At work, Sabin started floating half-jokes about putting Merritt in charge of morale. Someone laughed. I marked who. One Thursday, I brought coffee into a planning session and Sabin said, Look at this guy. Does it all. Someone clapped. Colette didn't say anything, not even a glance. That night, I opened my notebook and wrote the updated number. Then I drew a circle around it. 12.4%. No leaks. I didn't celebrate. I just closed the book and got ready for the next move. They brought in Riverbend Productions to shoot some glossy doc on the sisters' leadership story. Lights everywhere. Those soft pastel chairs they love. Sabin in a blazer 2 sizes too sharp. Colette in a cream blouse like it was casual Friday at a charity board. I sat in the back of the main conference room with my notebook. Like always, I wasn't mic'd, nobody offered, I didn't care, I wasn't there to perform. They left a call sheet on the printer by the kitchen. White paper, thick stock, black staple in the top corner. I took a photo with my phone while pretending to refill my mug, talking points printed word for word. I read through the lines and saw my old Southeast strategy, my work, draped in Sabin's voice like she dreamed it up over rosé on a flight to Austin. She fed lines to the director between takes, light suggestions, sure. But when I heard her say, "Our Southeast model was about anticipating shift, not reacting," I hit record. The phrase was mine. The numbers were mine. She delivered it like a toast at her own wedding. Same week, I got an email from Jessa in accounting. PDF attachment, vague subject line, no body text. Could have been an accident. Could have been something else. The file showed a proposed early pay scheme with Blue Heart beverages. They were dressing it up as a liquidity unlock for downstream vendors, but the structure was pure feeder deal. Advance payments traded for pricing favors that would kill our cash flow. I cornered Malcolm Fitch in the garage 2 nights later. Yellow lights, oil spots, a stack of pallets in the corner. I asked, "You know anything about this Blue Heart thing?" He gave me the kind of look you save for a stranger who knows too much. You're stirring pots that don't need stirring. Next morning, I got dropped from 3 meetings I'd been invited to for 6 years straight. No reasons, just vanished from the invites. At that point, I knew. Something was moving underneath me, and it wasn't just ego politics anymore. I checked the Magellan Bank language myself. We had a live covenant that explicitly restricted forward exposure to non-approved vendors. Blue Heart wasn't on the list. If that feeder program triggered payment before validation, it could have yanked us out of compliance in a heartbeat. I wasn't guessing. Nomi from legal had sent me those early drafts back when she still thought I was on the CC list. I logged the doc. I noted the sender, the date, the doc title, and the line item that mattered. Then I wrote another section. Unproven, high probability. I learned to keep those separate. What I knew and what I felt. 2 different columns. Riverbend's assistant came up to me near the end of the week. "Hey, we're doing a segment on support structure. Could we get a quick sound bite of you talking about backing Colette?" I said, "Sure, if it helps the story." I sat down, camera in my face. I smiled. I kept it short. Nothing bitter, just vague lines about vision and growth. They nodded, thanked me, packed up. 7 days later, that same assistant must have hit the wrong contact. I got a text, raw cut link, and post schedule. I opened the link. Chapter titles hit like bricks. Legacy through Sisters. Innovation at the helm. The Southeast turnaround. Sabin's bet. I watched the first 2 minutes. Sabin delivering my playbook in her voice, my charts in her hands, no mention of the one guy who actually piloted it. It wasn't just misattribution, it was a rewrite. That night, I started a folder on my desktop. Riverbend, fact check. I pulled in emails, original slides, and the audio file of Sabin knocking my analysis during a planning call and calling it decorative. The calendar invite had the timestamp. It wasn't speculation. It was data. By month 5, I was at 36%. I kept the papers clean. Kaido kept the wires quiet. The big bite came from a family trust in Sarasota. One of Rupert's old cousins had no stomach for board meetings and needed to fund tuition for grandkids. Colette signed off on the share release without reading the fine print. I watched her do it. She didn't even ask who the buyer was. I logged the transaction, backed up the folder, and poured myself a drink I didn't even want. I found the key by accident, which is how most real leverage shows up. I was boxing Rupert's old papers because no one else wanted to touch them. His desk sat pushed against the wall like a relic, drawers jammed with legal pads and contracts nobody had opened since the funeral. When I slid the bottom drawer out, my fingers brushed something rough underneath. A strip of thin blue painter's tape. I peeled it back, and a small brass key dropped into my palm. No tag. Just weight. I kept boxing for another minute, then shut the door and sat down. The key felt familiar somehow. I flipped it over and saw a faint marking scratched into the metal. I dug through Rupert's notebooks and found it. Magellan Bank. Safe deposit number written in stubby handwriting. Same pen, same pressure. Same hand. I went to the branch that afternoon. No announcement, no phone call. Just a teller who checked the ID, glanced at the authorization, and led me to a back room that smelled like paper and dust. Inside the box were original paper certificates, thick stock, embossed seal, never digitized, 4% of the company, issued in Rupert's name. I didn't breathe for a second. Under the certificates was a letter, folded once, dated 2 weeks before his last run. Rupert's handwriting again, steady and clean. "If Merritt is reading this," it said, "my plan failed. Use these as insurance." I read it twice before moving on. The enclosure behind it spelled out the condition he'd hinted at, but never explained in full. The shares vested to me if I had already delivered 2 consecutive quarters of at least 18% growth in a division I led. No board approval required, no family override. I already had. The Southeast had clocked 19%, then 21, back-to-back the previous fall. I had the emails, the board decks, the audited reports signed off by external accountants. It wasn't opinion. It was math. I didn't tell Colette. I didn't tell Sabin. I walked straight to Noemi's office with the blinds half open and closed them myself. We read the letter together. She didn't rush. She checked state law, corporate bylaws, trust language, and the Magellan account documentation. She cross-referenced the vesting language with the audit trail. Finally, she leaned back and said, "It's tight, but it stands." He kept these out of probate for a reason. That was all I needed. I called Cato from the parking lot, told him what I had. He didn't cheer. He just recalculated. "We finish it," he said. "Quiet crawls, no noise." We lined up the last purchases. Marjorie Wills, Rupert's former secretary, sold a small block. She said she trusted Rupert's judgment and didn't need the stress anymore. 2 cousins sold theirs to fund tuition for grandkids. Straight transfers, no drama. While that was moving, I emailed Riverbend's producer asking for time to clarify dates and sourcing. He sent back a polite brush-off about deadlines and editorial independence. That was fine. I didn't need their permission. I emailed myself the full fact-check packet from a burner account, every document, every timestamp. I printed it all, slid it into a brown envelope, and sealed it. That envelope went into my own safe deposit box across town. Different bank, different branch. When Rupert's certificates cleared, my total hit 51%. I sat at my desk after hours with a calculator and checked the math twice. Percentages from each entity, voting alignment, proxy triggers. Old habit. Numbers don't care how you feel. I stacked the papers neatly, locked them in the drawer, and wrote one line in my notebook. Majority achieved. Control active. Then I turned off the light, shut the door, and walked out knowing the room was about to change. One more piece needed fitting before I moved. Pendry Manufacturing had flagged a timeline risk, late installs, payment triggers, cascading penalties. Sabin's Blue Heart fantasy was about to starve them right when we were contractually on the hook for 3 regional builds. If Pendry pulled, 3 other clients would follow. Malcolm found me behind HQ, back near the loading bays where the delivery trucks looped in and out. His shirt was half untucked and he looked like he hadn't slept. "I shouldn't say this," he muttered, eyes low. "But the Blue Heart paper gets signed in principle tomorrow. Colette and Sabin already gave the nod." I looked at him hard. "Why are you telling me now?" He rubbed the back of his neck, stared at the ground. "Because I'm tired of playing messenger for people who haven't touched a shop floor in years. They're about to wreck Pendry, and I don't think they care." There was a beat where neither of us said anything. Then he looked me in the eye and said it straight. "I helped edge you out, Merritt. Early on, I thought it was temporary." I didn't flinch. "You know what this means," I said. "We're going to have to kill that deal on the record. Loud." He didn't argue. That night, I took the brown envelope, thick, labeled, organized, and walked it straight into Riverbend's hands. Field producer, 3rd floor, lobby cafe, no drama, just dates, call sheets, internal quotes with attribution, and a copy of Rupert's letter. He said, "What is all this?" And I told him, "It's context." Then I went home, uploaded one email to a hard drive, sealed the physical copy, and walked it into a different safe deposit box across town. 2 layers of backup. I wasn't taking chances. At 6:07 a.m. sharp, I sent the invite. Subject: Emergency board session. Structural changes time, 2 p.m. Location, main conference. Signed, Merritt Vance. That was the moment the whisper turned into thunder. At 6:32, Colette texted, "What's this?" I didn't answer. If you've ever been through it, you know when talk is over. There's a switch that flips, and when it does, silence is strategy. Around 11, Riverbend's field producer called to confirm a few quotes. His voice cracked halfway through the sentence. He'd seen my packet. One of his assistants must have leaked it up the chain because by lunchtime I had 5 missed calls from their legal team. I didn't answer those either. Kaido flew in that morning. No warning. Just a quiet knock on the back entrance door and a carry-on in hand. He walked straight into the spare conference room and laid everything out. Folder stacks, table assignments, speaker order, contingency language. Every line planned. Every possible objection countered. We walked through the order of documents, who to call on, when to pause, and where to push. He flagged who might waffle and where to press hard. "You need to open with control," he said. "No preamble, no smiles. Control first, then the rest." I nodded. He adjusted his cuffs, closed the folder, and said, "This only works if you don't blink." I didn't sleep much the night before, but I didn't need sleep. The plan had been riding in my head for months, so ingrained I could run it without thinking. I knew the faces, the questions, the pushback, and the numbers they couldn't argue with. At 1:38, I sat alone in the room and laid out the final packets, every folder marked, every chair placed. I looked down at the table where Rupert used to sit and thought, now. Then I walked out, straightened my jacket, and waited by the door. They filed in like it was just another meeting, half curious, half bored. Most didn't even bring notepads. Harlan Breck gave me a nod on his way past. Marjorie Wills clutched her purse like a shield and sat close to the door. Colette came in 7 minutes late, hair still damp, makeup rushed. She looked like she'd just come from taping a thought leadership interview. Sabin swept in right behind her, latte in one hand, phone in the other, that same smug half-smile she wore anytime she thought the room was already hers. "Let's keep it tight," Colette said as she slid into Rupert's old seat like she owned it. "I have a client call at 3. I stood up. My pulse was steady. "Before we start, I want to introduce my counsel team, Kaido Shen of Harborline Capital and our attorneys from Belmere and Roth." Kaido stepped forward like a surgeon walking into a clean room. No nerves, no wasted movement. He placed a thick folder at each seat. "Representing the interests of the new majority shareholder," he said, voice clear and sharp. The shift in the room was instant. Chairs stopped moving. Sabin froze mid-sip. Colette blinked. "Knew what?" Colette asked. Sabin tapped her cup against the table like she was waiting for a punchline. "Is this some kind of stunt?" I didn't answer. I opened with the facts. I put the transfer chain on the screen. Proxy agreements, voting blocks, Rupert's original 4% certificates from the Magellan box, then Nomi's memo, legal analysis confirming vesting tied to my KPI performance. "As of this morning," I said, "I hold 51% of Morrison and Company. Voting control is effective immediately." Sabin's latte hit the table too hard and splashed across her blazer. No one moved to help. No one laughed. The silence was the kind that eats sound. I clicked to the next slide. "Let's discuss the Blue Heart deal." I projected the Magellan Bank covenant language, highlighted, bolded. Nomi read it out. Her voice didn't waver once. Then Malcolm stepped in. "Signing with Blue Heart would have triggered immediate non-compliance," he said, "which means calls on 2 facilities and a freeze on the Pendry installation schedule. It would have cost us 6 clients and probably our line of credit." Nobody challenged it. We moved to vote. The motion to kill Blue Heart passed 10-0. Then came the paperwork. I handed Colette and Sabin their separation packets. I didn't gloat. I didn't look at them when I passed the folders. It wasn't about theatrics, just the terms. "Effective today," I said. "You are both removed from all operational roles. Board seats remain pending review." Sabin opened her folder and said, "This is a joke." "It's not," I replied. "It's dated and signed." Security came in on cue, not loud, not rough. 2 guards, plain clothes, badges in hand. They stood at the door and waited. Sabin pushed her chair back like she wanted to argue. Colette didn't say a word. She stood, gathered her purse, and walked out like she'd rehearsed it. I watched them through the glass. 2 silhouettes holding white envelopes like test results they didn't want to read. On the way out, someone's phone buzzed, then another, then mine. Riverbend had just posted the trailer. It wasn't a tribute anymore. They'd pulled quotes from my packet. Sabin's recorded insults, side-by-side timelines, footage of me clearing plates cut against her voice claiming credit for Southeast recovery. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. The board sat frozen. I let them watch. Then I shut the screen off and said, "Let's continue." Thursday morning, I brought in the team I should have had from the start. Sarai Cheon stepped in as COO, calm voice, no fluff. She wasn't flashy, and she didn't kiss rings. The board had pushed her aside a year earlier after she flagged risk on Sabin's automation pitch. I brought her back and gave her full authority. Ion Walsh returned to lead strategy. She was pure logic. Data first, ego last. She never cared about credit, just traction. The last leadership team buried her insights under vanity decks. I gave her the budget I'd never been allowed to touch. She didn't say thank you. She just got to work. Noemi moved up to general counsel. Everyone saw that coming. She read contracts like she was decoding a wiretap. That instinct saved us more than once. I told her, no more sidelines, and she didn't hesitate. First order of business was Pendry. We split the install window into 3 manageable waves, reassigned our best crew leads, and rerouted one sleepy vendor sitting on parts for 9 weeks. Sarai handled the logistics. Ion tracked the cascade impacts. We didn't just plug holes, we rerouted the flow entirely. They built a dashboard that cut through the noise. No sugar charts, no filters, just load, status, risk, and client flags. It sat on a screen outside my office. Anyone could walk by and see what mattered. We didn't make a big deal about transparency. We just turned it on. 2 days later, Malcolm came into my office, closed the door, and said I was wrong. I let him finish. Then I said, "You don't fix this in private." He nodded. The next morning, he stood in front of 80 employees and took the hit. "I followed the wrong people," he said. "I own that." Afterward, he walked back to his desk and got to work. That's why he's still here. We gutted 2 of Sabin's favorite vanity projects, one involving influencer partnerships, the other some kind of branded podcast. No one fought it, not even the marketing team. We funneled that budget straight into safety stock for critical SKUs. It wasn't sexy, it just worked. That weekend, Riverbend aired the full doc. It wasn't a hit piece, just facts and footage, quotes, dates, decisions. People saw the meetings, heard the claims, and watched the contrast. I didn't need to narrate it. The silence in the edit did that for me. Colette sent 3 long emails about legacy and intent. I didn't reply. I had Noemi file them in our legal archive, not to fight her, just to keep the record straight. The quarter closed up 22% from the trough. Client satisfaction hit an all-time high. The whispering in the halls stopped. People started raising hands again. I saw project leads stepping up without being asked. No one was covering for their titles anymore. I met with Magellan face-to-face. No deck. Just clean operations comps, forward projections, and updated governance terms. They agreed to relax our covenants for 6 months while we finished the rebuild. That window bought us real breath. That night, I sat in my office with the lights low and nothing buzzing. I didn't check email. I didn't refresh dashboards. I leaned back and realized my jaw wasn't clenched for once. I got home, dropped my keys on the counter, and slept 8 hours straight. First time in years. People expect the ending where I shut it all down and walk away. That's not what happened. I had a win in hand and choices in front of me. I asked myself what I'd want to look back on at 60, not what would feel good for 5 loud minutes. I moved Colette off operations, not into exile, not into the spotlight either. We created a family initiatives fund, tight scope, tighter oversight, and a board that didn't owe her anything. She reports to them. She gets a vote, not a throne. The budget's lean. Every dollar has eyes on it. Sabin lost her hands on the levers. She kept a board seat under review for 12 months. She didn't keep it after that. She had chances to engage, to contribute, to actually do the work. Instead, she chose podcasts, panels, and polished quotes. I didn't push her out. She walked herself there. We launched the Morrison Initiative for Women Heirs 6 weeks after the dust settled. I didn't do it to make headlines. I did it because I'd seen it firsthand. How smart daughters, daughters-in-law, even wives get handed scraps in family businesses and told to be helpful. Sabin wasn't the exception. She was the pattern. We don't do speeches. We do tools, legal templates, shadow P&Ls, bank packets you can actually hand to a lender who speaks real terms. Since launch, we've helped 16 women step into roles with teeth, ownership, control, not window dressing. One of the first was Amanda Rodriguez, from a third-gen construction outfit in Arkansas. She'd built their internal project system from scratch. Her brother got the company truck and the title. 6 months after we worked with her, she opened her own shop, took half the accounts with her. Her father called me furious. Then he called back asking our rates. People still ask how I figured out what was happening behind the scenes. It wasn't magic. Malcolm told me the truth in a parking lot. Noemi copied me on a draft when she forgot I was off the list. Riverbend's assistant left call sheets on the wrong printer. Kaido sent records with tabs and summaries. I paid attention. I wrote it all down. The day in the boardroom made good TV. But the win was smaller. It was walking back into rooms and being asked for my take, and knowing I'd earned it. It was setting down coffee and not hearing babe like I was the help. If you're wondering, no, Colette and I didn't get back together. We talk at holidays. We're civil. That's enough. That's better. At 58, I don't replay the worst moments. I use them. That's what Rupert meant by insurance. He didn't leave me a shortcut. He left a test. I passed it the long way. That's the only way it sticks. Quick question. What would you do in my shoes at your job or home? If you have hype, tap it to boost this. Please subscribe and like, and drop a comment.